Hello, and welcome to Hope is Kindled. Today we journey into the spiritual and psychological depths of the Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a towering novel that confronts the great questions of life, faith, doubt, suffering, morality, and the possibility of redemption. Albert Einstein once said that he learned more from Dostoevsky than from any scientist, and he called the Brothers Karamazov the supreme summit of all literature. That's no small praise from a man who unlocked the mysteries of the universe. But perhaps it makes sense. Dostoevsky wasn't content with formulas or arguments. He wrote literature that reaches the soul. His characters don't merely talk about big ideas, they live them, suffer them, and sometimes even die for them. I've read the Brothers Karamazov more than once, and each time it seems to change shape. When I first read it, I was younger and found myself drawn to Ivan's fierce intelligence and doubts. Later, I admired Alyosha's quiet integrity, his stubborn hope. And always, I've been haunted by the tragedy at its center, the murder of Fyodor Pavlovich by one of his sons, or perhaps all of them, in some spiritual sense. This is not a whodunit in the usual sense. It is a who are we novel. Who are we when tested? Who are we when we've lost faith, when we grieve, when we fail? And perhaps most importantly, can we be redeemed? The Karamazov brothers, Dmitri, Ivan, and Alyosha, represent three parts of the human spirit. Dmitri, the sensualist, is torn between shame and passion. Ivan, the rationalist, struggles with deep philosophical skepticism. Alyosha, the youngest, follows the teachings of the wise elder Zosima, embodying a life of service, humility, and faith. It is in Ivan that Dostoevsky stages perhaps the most devastating critique of faith in literature. His infamous chapter, The Grand Inquisitor, presents a parable in which Christ returns during the Spanish Inquisition, only to be arrested. The Inquisitor tells Christ that humanity doesn't want freedom, but security. He argues that religion has become a system of control, that people would rather follow than love. Ivan's words are deeply unsettling, especially when he says, "I hasten to give back my entrance ticket to the universe, if that ticket requires the suffering of a single child." It's one of the most chilling indictments of the problem of evil ever written. Yet Ivan does not have peace in his doubt. His brilliance cannot save him. His logic doesn't shield him from suffering. In fact, it drags him to madness. He is visited by a devil, a projection of his own mind, who torments him not with fire and brimstone, but with sarcasm, banality, and the absurdity of his own disbelief. Through Ivan, Dostoevsky shows us that reason without love can become inhuman. Doubt that does not seek compassion becomes despair. His descent into confusion is a warning to those of us who struggle with belief, not to abandon questioning, but to remain open to grace. Dmitri, the eldest, is a man at war with himself. He is accused of murdering his father, a crime he insists he did not commit, though he admits he had the motive and opportunity. Dmitri is reckless, passionate, and violent. But he also has conscience. His torment is real, and this is where Dostoevsky surprises us. Dmitri's journey is one of suffering and renewal. Through hardship, he begins to change. He accepts punishment, embraces humility, and dreams of rising again. In the prison cell, he says, "We are all cruel, we are all monsters, but I want to be better." In a world that often tells us that the past defines us, the Brothers Karamazov insists that we can change. Even the worst among us can be transformed, not by denial, but by truth, suffering, and love. Dmitri's arc is one of hope, not despair. He reminds us that redemption is not about perfection, it is about striving toward the light, even from the darkest place. Alyosha, the youngest brother, is often misunderstood. Some readers find him too gentle, too saintly. But Dostoevsky did not write him as a simplistic figure of piety. Alyosha has doubts too. He grieves deeply when his beloved elder Zosima dies, and when Zosima's body begins to decay, many lose faith. Alyosha does not. He wrestles with disappointment and temptation, but he emerges stronger, more compassionate. Dostoevsky calls him an angelic man, But what makes Alyosha compelling is not that he's perfect, it's that he listens. He comforts. He serves. He stands at the center of the novel as a moral compass, not preaching, but quietly showing what it means to love. One of the most beautiful moments in the book comes at the very end, when Alyosha speaks to a group of schoolboys mourning the death of their friend. He tells them to remember this moment of love and friendship all their lives. You must know that there is nothing higher, and stronger, and more wholesome and good in life than some good memory. If a man carries many such memories with him into life, he is safe to the end of his days. That line never fails to move me. The Brothers Karamazov does not flinch from cruelty. The central crime, the murder of the father, is devastating. The trial is wrenching. And perhaps most haunting of all are the stories of abused children, like little Alyosha, whose pain and death break the heart. Dostoevsky was not content to give us villains and heroes. He gives us suffering, and then he gives us the possibility of light. As Elder Zosima says, "What is hell? I maintain that it is the suffering of being unable to love." That's it. Hell is not fire, it's isolation. It's the turning inward of the soul until it can no longer reach anyone else. And the opposite? Heaven is connection, love, sacrifice, forgiveness. Dostoevsky didn't invent these ideas in a vacuum. His own life was marked by loss, illness, imprisonment, and poverty. He was sentenced to death, only to be reprieved at the last second. He spent years in Siberia. He knew suffering, and he knew redemption. This novel is not only philosophical, it is autobiographical. It is his witness. I've been to Russia. I've walked the boulevards of Moscow, stood in the chill silence of St. Petersburg. Reading the Brothers Karamazov now brings back not only those places, but something deeper, a sense of shared humanity across time. Dostoevsky doesn't just describe Russia, he captures the soul of a people, of a world in crisis. Now, I know what you're thinking. We've spent the last 30 minutes immersed in patricide, suffering, theological crisis, and the burning question of whether God exists in a world filled with cruelty. So, where are the Muppets? Don't worry. We didn't forget our promise to keep things light from time to time, even when we're plunging into the depths of the Russian soul. So picture this. A Muppet adaptation. The Brothers Karamazov. Yes, it did exist, thanks to Bear in the Big Blue House, though we are left to imagine how it unfolds for ourselves. I, like OT, think of Kermit as Alyosha, of course, the compassionate, spiritual, and trying his very best to keep the family together. Fuzzy Bear as Dmitri, wildly emotional, always shouting, "Waka waka! I swear I didn't kill Papa!" Gonzo as Ivan, wrestling with the problem of evil while being trailed by dancing chickens dressed as devils and angels, whispering philosophical paradoxes. And who plays Fyodor Pavlovich, the drunken, scandalous father? Why, Statler and Waldorf, naturally, heckling themselves from the balcony and from within the narrative. Imagine Ivan's famous Grand Inquisitor speech, delivered with shadow puppets by Gonzo in a smoky tavern, while Beaker, as the silent Christ, just stands blinking at him. Tragic? Yes. Hilarious? Also, yes. Exactly what Dostoevsky envisioned. Probably not. But that's what makes Hope is Kindled special. Because even when we wrestle with suffering and doubt, we leave room for joy, for absurdity, for Gonzo's chickens. Because sometimes, in the darkest places, a little laughter is what keeps us human. As we close the chapter on the Brothers Karamazov, we leave behind a world where every choice is a spiritual battleground, where the soul trembles between grace and guilt, and love wages war against despair. In looking at some of the other works we have examined, Dostoevsky stands tall among giants, and he speaks to them. When Ivan cries out that he cannot accept a world built on the tears of a single innocent child, we hear the same shudder we felt in Kafka's Metamorphosis, as Gregor is discarded by the very family he supported. Both texts confront a world where suffering often feels meaningless, and both ask us, can compassion save us? Alyosha, on the other hand, gentle, patient, persistent, shares his spiritual DNA with Emerson's self-reliance. He doesn't speak in aphorisms, but his life is one. A quiet affirmation that integrity and inner conviction are the only real foundation we have. And Dmitri, full of torment and contradiction, recalls Pip from great expectations both men lost in love, guilt, and the desperate hope of redemption. Both ask if a person can truly change or if the past forever binds us. Ivan's fevered philosophical dialogues echo Nietzsche's abyss. In fact, Nietzsche once said Dostoevsky was the only psychologist from whom I have anything to learn. And in The Demons, Dostoevsky gave us the kind of nihilistic fury that foreshadows the very forces that Ivan Kraï must reckon with in this book. But perhaps the deepest resonance comes from a very different place. From The Count of Monte Cristo, where Edmond Dantes suffers unjust imprisonment and learns that vengeance, no matter how satisfying, is not the same as salvation. And like Dantes, the brothers, especially Dmitri, must choose between justice and mercy, between retribution and love. Even the Odyssey, that ancient journey of return, finds a mirror in Karamazov. Odysseus fights monsters. The Karamazovs fight themselves. And just as Odysseus longs to return home, to Ithaca, to Penelope, Dostoevsky's characters ache to return to something greater, to innocence, to love, to God. These stories, taken together, show us the full spectrum of the human condition, from chaos to clarity, from betrayal to forgiveness, from isolation to connection. And that's the purpose of Hope is Kindled, not just to admire these works but to walk through them, to let them light the dark places within us, to find in their pages the courage to go on. Next time, on Hope is Kindled, we turn from Russia's candlelit cathedrals to Victorian England's gilded drawing rooms, from the anguish of repentance to the allure of youth, from the cry, "What is hell?" to the whispered question, "What if I could escape it forever?" Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray is not just a story about beauty and decay, it's a cautionary fable about influence, identity, and the masks we wear to hide our emptiness. Where Dostoevsky gives us Alyosha, gentle, grounded, full of faith, Wilde gives us Lord Henry Wotton, clever, cynical, and seductive. A man who says, the only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it, and we'll see what happens when Dorian listens. We'll talk about friendship, influence, vanity, and the soul's slow withering. And maybe, just maybe, we'll see how even in Wilde's decadent mirror, hope can still flicker. Until then, be mindful of the voices you let into your heart. To those listening who carry doubt, pain, or regret, know that you're not alone. This book understands you. And more importantly, it believes in your possibility. Redemption may not erase the past, but it can transform the present. Let me close with the quote that names this podcast. You must know that there is nothing higher than some good memory. If a man carries many such memories with him into life, he is safe to the end of his days. May we carry such memories. May we be the reason someone else does. And may the light Dostoevsky spoke of, compassion, humility, love, guide our steps. Good journey.